From a legendary wolfdog's chilling performance to a poster painted so fast the canvas was still wet at delivery, John Carpenter's Antarctic nightmare harbors secrets as strange as the shapeshifter itself. Behind the paranoid masterpiece lurks Hollywood's most bizarre production disasters, career-saving animal actors, and a box office battle with a friendly alien that changed cinema history forever. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Thing. Fact 1. The iconic poster was painted in 24 hours. One of the most recognizable horror movie posters of all time was created under extraordinary pressure, with almost no information about the film itself. In the spring of 1982, legendary movie poster artist Drew Struzan received an urgent phone call from Universal Pictures asking him to create artwork for John Carpenter's The Thing, and they needed it completed in less than 24 hours. At the time, Struzan had already established himself as one of Hollywood's most talented commercial artists, having worked on posters for Star Wars and the Muppet movie. But this particular job would push him to his absolute limits. The challenge was made even more difficult by the fact that Struzan hadn't seen the movie and was given almost no reference materials to work with. Universal couldn't provide him with photos of actors, monster designs, or even detailed plot information. All he had was a very brief synopsis explaining that the film was about a shape-shifting alien in Antarctica. Without time to overthink his approach, Struzan quickly developed a concept that would hint at the movie's mysterious tone without revealing specific details. He rushed outside wearing his own heavy winter parka with the hood pulled up, and his wife Dylan hurriedly photographed him, striking various poses with his arms outstretched. She then ran into their laundry room to develop the film and make prints so Drew could choose the best shot. After faxing his initial composition to Universal and receiving approval, Struzan worked straight through the night, painting the iconic image of a hooded figure with brilliant light, radiating from where the face should be, surrounded by shards of icy blue. When the delivery driver arrived the next morning to collect the artwork, the acrylic paint was still so wet that it stuck to the glass when they placed it under protective covering for photography, but the poster made it to theaters and became one of cinema's most enduring images. Fact 2. The dog was actually a half-wolf hybrid. The unsettling canine that serves as the film's initial threat wasn't actually a dog at all, but rather a wolf-malamute hybrid named Jed, who was born at the Whatcom Humane Society in Bellingham, Washington in 1977. Jed was adopted by a man named Gary Winkler, who happened to be the second cousin of actor Henry Winkler, and Gary collected Siberian Huskies and Alaskan Malamutes for use in film and television work. What made Jed absolutely perfect for his role in The Thing was that his wolf heritage gave him behavioral traits that were distinctly different from typical domesticated dogs, creating an inherently eerie quality that the filmmakers didn't even have to train him to achieve. Unlike regular dog actors who are naturally friendly and focused on their human handlers, Jed moved with the calculated wariness of a wild animal, never barked or growled like a normal dog would, and maintained an unnerving stare that made even the crew members uncomfortable on set. Director John Carpenter praised Jed's extraordinary abilities in the film's commentary, noting that during dolly shots, the animal would completely ignore the camera, the director, and the entire crew, which is almost impossible for most animal actors to accomplish. Actor Richard Masur, who became friendly with Jed during production, recalled that the wolfdog's intense staring was particularly unsettling and that he did everything with the mannerisms of a wild wolf rather than a pet. Jed went on to have a successful career, appearing in other notable films including The Journey of Natty Gann and Disney's White Fang movies, where he worked alongside actors like Ethan Hawke, who later praised the animal's incredible integrity as a performer. When Jed passed away in June of 1995, a full-page memorial advertisement was published in Variety magazine commemorating his contributions to cinema, a rare honor that demonstrated how much respect the film industry had for his work. Fact 3. Rob Bottin worked himself into hospitalization. The groundbreaking special effects that made The Thing a landmark in practical creature design came at an enormous personal cost to the young artist responsible for creating them. Rob Bottin was only 22 years old when he took on the massive responsibility of designing and building every grotesque transformation and alien form seen throughout the film, and he approached the job with an intensity that eventually pushed his body beyond its limits. For more than a year, Bottin worked on the project without taking a single day off, becoming so consumed by the work that he essentially moved into the studio and lived there full-time. He would sleep in locker rooms and on the sets themselves, rather than going home, constantly refining and perfecting the intricate puppets, animatronics, and prosthetics that would bring John Carpenter's vision of body horror to life. Bottin was involved in every single aspect of the creature's design and construction, overseeing a team while also doing hands-on work himself, which meant he was putting in extraordinarily long hours day after day with no breaks to rest or recover. This relentless schedule and complete lack of self-care eventually caught up with him, and his body simply gave out from pure exhaustion. He ended up being hospitalized and was forced to step away from the production temporarily to recover his health. During this critical period when Bottin was unable to work, the legendary special effects artist Stan Winston stepped in to help complete one of the film's most memorable sequences, which was the kennel scene where the dog transforms into a horrifying alien creature. Winston was generous enough to contribute his talents without asking for credit because he didn't want to take attention away from Bottin's monumental achievement, and the collaboration between these two masters of practical effects resulted in some of the most stunning and disturbing visuals ever captured on film. Fact 4. The opening Norwegian dialogue spoils everything. The film opens with one of cinema's most tense and mysterious sequences, showing a helicopter from a Norwegian research station desperately pursuing a husky across the Antarctic snow while the men inside fire rifles and throw grenades at what appears to be an innocent dog. For English-speaking audiences, the scene is deliberately confusing and raises immediate questions about why these men seem to have lost their minds, but anyone watching the film who happened to speak Norwegian would have understood exactly what was happening from the very first moments. The Norwegian pilot is shouting frantically in his native language, and his words were intentionally left unsubtitled by director John Carpenter to preserve the mystery for most viewers. But the actual translation reveals that he's desperately trying to warn the Americans about the true nature of what they're seeing. The Norwegian's exact words translate to, "Get the hell away. That's not a dog. It's some sort of thing. It's imitating a dog. It isn't real. Get away, you idiots," which essentially gives away the entire premise of the movie in the opening scene. This means that Norwegian-speaking audience members knew immediately that the dog was actually a shape-shifting alien creature, and that the helicopter crew wasn't crazy at all, but rather trying to prevent a catastrophe from spreading to the American research station. The language barrier becomes a tragic plot device, because if even one person at the American outpost had understood Norwegian, they could have taken proper precautions and potentially avoided the nightmare that unfolds throughout the rest of the film. The decision to leave this dialogue unsubtitled was a brilliant storytelling choice that created two completely different viewing experiences depending on whether the audience could understand what was being shouted, and it adds an extra layer of irony when rewatching the film with full knowledge of what the desperate Norwegian was trying to communicate. Fact 5. The cast nearly died in a bus accident. Before a single frame of the thing was ever shot on location, the entire cast came terrifyingly close to dying in a transportation accident that would have ended the production before it even began. The filming location for the exterior Antarctic scenes was in Stewart, British Columbia, which is a small town in the northern part of the province near the Yukon Territory, and getting there required the actors to endure a grueling 6-hour bus ride. From their starting point, the journey took them through remote mountainous terrain during the middle of winter, which meant they were traveling on narrow roads covered in ice and snow with steep drops on either side. During this trip, the weather conditions deteriorated rapidly as intense snowfall reduced visibility and made the already dangerous roads even more treacherous, and at one point, the bus carrying the cast began to slide uncontrollably on the icy surface. The driver struggled to maintain control as the heavy vehicle skidded toward the edge of the road where a cliff dropped off into what would have been a fatal plunge, and for several terrifying moments it seemed entirely possible that everyone on board was about to go over the side. Fortunately, the bus managed to come to a stop just short of going over the edge, and the shaken cast was able to continue on to the filming location safely. But the close call served as a stark reminder of just how isolated and dangerous their work environment was going to be. The incident wasn't widely reported at the time and hasn't been discussed much in the years since. But it remains one of those behind-the-scenes near disasters that could have completely changed film history if things had gone just slightly differently. The cast and crew were already preparing to spend weeks working in sub-freezing temperatures while filming scenes of isolation and survival in a hostile environment, but they almost never got the chance to make the movie at all. Fact 6. E.T. murdered The Thing at the box office. The Thing arrived in theaters on June 25, 1982, which turned out to be one of the worst possible release dates in cinema history for a dark and nihilistic horror film about a murderous alien creature. Just 2 weeks earlier, Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial had opened to massive audiences and was already well on its way to becoming a cultural phenomenon with its heartwarming story of a friendly alien who just wanted to phone home and return to his family. The contrast between these two alien movies could not have been more extreme, with E.T. offering an optimistic and family-friendly view of alien contact, while The Thing presented audiences with one of the bleakest and most disturbing visions of extraterrestrial life ever put on screen. The Thing managed to earn only $19.6 million during its entire theatrical run against a production budget of $15 million, making it barely profitable and ranking it as only the 42nd highest-grossing film of 1982. What makes this box office failure even more remarkable is that both films were released by the same studio, Universal Pictures, which meant the company was essentially competing against itself. Universal executive Robert Rame had told the producers of The Thing that the studio was counting on their film's success because they genuinely believed E.T. would only appeal to children and wouldn't have the broad audience reach that it ultimately achieved. This miscalculation proved disastrous for The Thing, as E.T. went on to earn over $600 million worldwide and became the highest-grossing film of all time up to that point. Producer David Foster later recalled attending a screening of E.T. before The Thing was released, and after seeing how audiences reacted to a trailer for The Thing with complete silence, he reportedly said, "We're dead," because he knew they couldn't compete with Spielberg's phenomenon. Fact 7. It opened the same day as Blade Runner. June 25, 1982, stands as one of the most remarkable dates in science fiction cinema history, because it saw the simultaneous release of two films that would eventually be recognized as absolute masterpieces of the genre, even though both were initially met with harsh criticism and audience indifference. John Carpenter's The Thing opened on the exact same day as Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, which meant these two dark and visually stunning science fiction films were forced to compete directly against each other for the attention of moviegoers who were already being pulled toward lighter entertainment options. The Thing debuted at number 8 at the box office during its opening weekend, earning just over $3 million from 840 theaters, while Blade Runner performed somewhat better by taking the number 2 spot with $6.1 million in its first weekend. However, both films were absolutely crushed by E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which was enjoying its third weekend in theaters and still managed to dominate the box office with $13.7 million, demonstrating just how completely Steven Spielberg's friendly alien had captured the public's imagination. Film critics were particularly brutal toward both movies, with The Thing being called everything from instant junk to dismissive comments about its excessive gore, while Blade Runner was criticized for being too slow and confusing despite its groundbreaking visual effects and production design. The summer of 1982 was already saturated with science fiction releases, including Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Tron, Conan the Barbarian, and Poltergeist, which meant audiences had an overwhelming number of genre options to choose from. Both The Thing and Blade Runner would go on to find passionate cult followings through home video releases and repeated television airings, eventually earning their places as two of the most influential and beloved science fiction films ever made. But their identical release date remains one of Hollywood's most unfortunate scheduling decisions. Fact 8. The legendary score was nominated for a Razzie. The haunting and minimalist musical score that has inseparable from The Thing's identity, was actually nominated for Worst Musical Score at the 3rd Annual Golden Raspberry Awards in 1983, which demonstrates just how badly critics and audiences misunderstood the film during its initial release. The score was composed by Ennio Morricone, the legendary Italian composer who had already established himself as one of cinema's greatest musical minds through his work on films like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Once Upon a Time in America. John Carpenter personally flew to Rome to meet with Morricone and convinced him to create music for this unusual Antarctic horror story, which was a significant departure from the composer's typical style. Morricone's score for The Thing was deliberately sparse and electronic, featuring deep droning synthesizers and a thudding heartbeat-like rhythm that perfectly captured the film's sense of creeping dread and isolation. But this approach was so different from his usual orchestral work that many people at the time simply didn't understand what he was trying to achieve. The Razzie nomination was actually Morricone's second that year, as he was also nominated for his work on the film Butterfly, which likely influenced the decision to include The Thing as well. The ultimate irony of this nomination became clear decades later when Quentin Tarantino asked Morricone to score his film The Hateful Eight in 2015, and the composer decided to incorporate unused pieces he had originally written for The Thing into the new score. This decision resulted in Morricone winning the Academy Award for Best Original Score at the age of 87, which was his first competitive Oscar win, despite having composed over 500 film scores during his 70-year career. The music that was once dismissed as one of the worst scores of 1982 ultimately helped earn its creator the highest honor in film composition more than 3 decades later. Fact 9. 3 different endings were filmed. The famously ambiguous ending that fans have debated for decades was not the only conclusion that John Carpenter filmed for The Thing, as the production actually shot multiple different endings in an attempt to find the right tone for the film's final moments. The ending that audiences know and love shows MacReady and Child sitting together in the burning wreckage of their Antarctic station, sharing a bottle and uncertain whether either of them is still human, but editor Todd Ramsey was concerned that this bleak and unresolved conclusion would not test well with audiences who wanted more clarity about the characters' fates. At Ramsey's urging, Carpenter filmed an alternate ending that was much more definitive and upbeat, showing MacReady being rescued by a helicopter in the spring and then taking a blood test at another facility that definitively proved he was still human and had not been taken over by the alien creature. Carpenter later said that this happier ending would have been cheesy from a stylistic standpoint, but Universal Studios was nervous enough about the film's dark tone that they seriously considered using it. A third ending was also created that removed the child's character entirely, leaving MacReady completely alone in the final scene to contemplate his fate without the tension of wondering whether his companion might be the Thing. This version was actually tested with audiences on the Universal lot using 2 separate screening rooms, with one showing the ambiguous ending and the other showing MacReady alone, and the response to the solo ending was only slightly better than the original. The happier rescue ending was actually approved and set to go to print for theatrical distribution, but at the last moment the producers Carpenter and studio executive Helena Hacker decided that keeping the ambiguity was more powerful than providing either a clear resolution or nothing at all, which is how the film ended up with the iconic, uncertain finale that has kept audiences guessing for over 40 years. Fact 10. The only female voice belongs to John Carpenter's wife. The Thing is notable for having an entirely male cast, with 15 men filling every single on-screen role, which creates an atmosphere of isolated masculinity that reinforces the film's themes of paranoia and distrust in an all-male Antarctic research environment. However, there is exactly one female presence in the entire movie, and it appears in the opening scene when Kurt Russell's character MacReady is playing chess against a computer that speaks with a synthesized female voice. The voice of this chess computer was performed by actress Adrienne Barbeau, who was married to director John Carpenter at the time the film was made, and had already established herself as one of his favorite collaborators. Barbeau had memorable roles in Carpenter's previous films, including playing the sultry late-night radio DJ in The Fog from 1980 and appearing in Escape from New York in 1981, making her a regular presence in his early work even though she never appeared on screen in The Thing. The chess computer scene serves as an important character moment for MacReady because it shows his competitive nature and his refusal to accept defeat, as he responds to losing the game by pouring his whiskey into the machine and calling it a cheating bitch before destroying it. According to Carpenter, there was originally supposed to be one female crew member at the Antarctic station, but the actress who was cast became pregnant and had to leave the production, which forced them to replace her with a male actor and resulted in the completely masculine cast that appears in the final film. The decision to make Barbeau's voice the only female sound in the entire movie, even though it's just a computerized chess opponent, adds another subtle layer to the film's exploration of isolation and creates an interesting contrast between human and artificial intelligence that foreshadows the later themes about what it means to be authentically human versus an imitation. Fact 11. Kurt Russell grew his hair for a year. Kurt Russell's rugged and weathered appearance as helicopter pilot, MacReady has become one of the most iconic looks in horror cinema, with his long hair and full beard perfectly capturing the character's tough, no-nonsense personality, and achieving that look required Russell to spend approximately 1 full year growing out his hair and facial hair specifically for the role. This level of physical commitment demonstrates how seriously Russell took the part, especially considering that he was only cast after John Carpenter had already approached numerous other high-profile actors who either turned down the role or were unavailable for various reasons. The character of MacReady was originally written by screenwriter Bill Lancaster, with actors like Harrison Ford or Clint Eastwood in mind, envisioning someone with a grizzled, weathered quality that would fit the harsh Antarctic setting. But both of those major stars passed on the opportunity to appear in what they likely saw as just another monster movie. Other actors who were seriously considered for the lead role included Jeff Bridges, Nick Nolte, Christopher Walken, Ed Harris, Tom Berenger, Scott Glenn, Fred Ward, Peter Coyote, and Tom Atkins, which shows just how difficult it was for the production to find someone willing to commit to this dark and violent science fiction film. Carpenter was initially hesitant to cast Russell despite having worked with him successfully on Escape from New York, because he was concerned that having a recognizable star in the lead role would undermine the film's ensemble feel and make it too obvious that MacReady would be the survivor. However, the casting process proved so difficult and time-consuming that Russell was actually the final casting decision made for the entire film, being hired after production had already begun shooting second unit footage. Russell's dedication to the role and his willingness to spend a year preparing physically for the part ultimately paid off, as his performance became the emotional anchor that holds the film together through all its paranoia and chaos. Fact 12. The blood test scene. Used actual blood. The blood test sequence is widely considered one of the most suspenseful and memorable scenes in The Thing, where MacReady tests each crew member's blood with a hot wire to see whose sample will react and reveal them as the alien creature. And the production achieved a surprising level of authenticity by using real blood during the filming of this crucial moment. Camera operator Ray Stella volunteered to stand in for the close-up shots where needles were inserted into arms to draw blood, and he reportedly told director John Carpenter that he was perfectly fine with being stuck with needles repeatedly and could do it all day if necessary to get the right footage. The actors themselves were shown on camera cutting their thumbs with a scalpel and letting drops of blood fall into small petri dishes, which created an intense atmosphere on set as everyone went through this uncomfortable process to make the scene feel as real as possible. However, if viewers pay close attention during the actual blood test sequence, they can spot a noticeable continuity error that reveals how the scene was constructed across multiple takes and setups. When the actors initially cut themselves and let blood drip into the dishes, each person only contributes a few small drops that barely cover the bottom of their individual containers. But when MacReady begins testing the blood samples by touching them with the heated wire, suddenly each Petri dish contains significantly more blood that completely covers the entire bottom surface. This discrepancy happened because the production needed to have enough blood in each dish for the hot wire test to look visually dramatic, and for the alien blood to have enough material to react convincingly when it's finally revealed. So they added extra blood between the setup shots and the actual testing shots. The error is minor enough that most viewers never notice it during the tension of the scene, but it remains visible in the final film for anyone who looks closely at the amount of blood in each dish. Fact 13. A flammable substance nearly killed the crew. One of the film's most disturbing and memorable sequences nearly became a genuine disaster when the special effects materials unexpectedly created a life-threatening situation on set. The scene in question involves the Norris character's severed head, sprouting spider-like legs, and attempting to escape across the floor, which required special effects creator Rob Bottin to build an incredibly detailed mechanical puppet that could move convincingly while appearing grotesque and organic. To make the creature look appropriately viscous and slimy as it scuttled away from the horrified crew members, Bottin covered his creation with a substance that would give it a wet, disgusting appearance under the studio lights, but he didn't realize that the material he chose happened to be highly flammable. During the filming of this sequence, director John Carpenter determined that, for the sake of continuity with previous scenes, there needed to be flames burning directly below the camera lens to maintain the visual consistency of the fire-filled environment where the scene takes place. As the crew prepared to ignite the fire bar that would create these flames, the enclosed room began filling up with dangerous fumes from the flammable substance coating the spiderhead puppet, creating an increasingly hazardous atmosphere that nobody immediately recognized as a serious problem. When the fire was finally ignited for the take, the entire replica body suddenly burst into flames far beyond what anyone had anticipated, and the uncontrolled fire quickly engulfed the room while cast and crew scrambled to safety. Fortunately, everyone managed to escape without serious injuries, but the incident was severe enough that production had to shut down for an entire day while the set was cleaned, ventilated, and made safe again before they could attempt to film a second take of the sequence. The near disaster served as a stark reminder of just how dangerous practical effects work could be, especially when dealing with fire and unknown chemical reactions in enclosed spaces. Fact 14. Palmer's eye light gave away the twist. During the famous blood test scene where MacReady uses a hot wire to determine which crew members have been taken over by the alien, the filmmakers planted a subtle visual clue that most viewers never consciously notice, but that creates an unsettling feeling about one particular character. Cinematographer Dean Cundy made a deliberate lighting choice to use what's called an eye light, which is a small light source positioned specifically to create a gleam or sparkle in an actor's eyes that makes them appear more alert and alive on camera. Throughout the blood test sequence, every single character who appears on screen has this telltale gleam visible in their eyes as they nervously wait to see if their blood will react to the hot wire and reveal them as an imposter, with one very important exception. The character Palmer, played by actor David Clennon, was deliberately filmed without any eye light reflection, which gives his eyes a noticeably flat and lifeless quality that subconsciously signals to the audience that something is different about him, even though most people wouldn't be able to articulate exactly what feels wrong. This careful attention to detail was not accidental, but rather a calculated decision by the filmmaking team to plant a visual hint just moments before Palmer's true nature is revealed in one of the film's most shocking and explosive transformation scenes. The missing eye gleam essentially tells observant viewers that Palmer is no longer human, because the thing imitating him doesn't have the same spark of life that the genuine humans possess, even though the alien is otherwise a perfect physical copy. This kind of subtle visual storytelling demonstrates the level of craftsmanship that went into every aspect of the film's production, where even tiny details like the reflection of light in someone's eyes could be used to enhance the paranoia and dread that permeates every scene, rewarding careful viewers who notice these small but significant clues on repeated viewings. Fact 15. The Norwegian camp was the American camp destroyed. The scenes where MacReady and Dr. Copper visit the destroyed Norwegian research station to investigate what happened to their neighbors are some of the most eerie and atmospheric moments in the entire film, showing the burnt-out wreckage and frozen corpses that hint at the horror that unfolded there. But these scenes were actually filmed, using a very clever cost-saving trick that most viewers would never suspect. John Carpenter intentionally scheduled the Norwegian camp scenes to be shot at the very end of the production after everything else had been completed, which allowed him to reuse the same set that had been built for the American research station throughout the main filming. The climax of the movie involves the American outpost being destroyed by fire and explosions as the surviving crew members desperately try to eliminate the alien creature, which meant the elaborate set that had been constructed for the film would be demolished anyway as part of the story. Rather than building an entirely separate set to represent the Norwegian station and then also destroying the American station set, Carpenter simply waited until after the destruction scenes were filmed and then used the burnt and exploded remains of the American outpost to double as the Norwegian camp. This approach saved the production a significant amount of money that would have been spent constructing a second research station set, and it also provided a certain narrative symmetry to the film by showing audiences what the American station would eventually become after its own encounter with the Thing. The production team did make some minor adjustments to the destroyed set to make it look appropriately different and more weathered, but the basic structure and layout remained the same, demonstrating how creative filmmaking decisions can solve budgetary constraints while actually enhancing the storytelling by visually connecting the fates of both research stations that encountered the same deadly alien organism.